Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. This is Josefina Onilla, and you're with us at the ROAR ROAR Virtual Conference. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a number of folks online where we are waiting for our keynote to arrive, but I thought I would start with you. Again, my name is Josefina Onilla, and you are part of the ROAR Virtual Conference 2.0. Thank you. You know, to talk about this type of event is to talk about inspiration and aspiration, right? As leaders, we're in the time during the pandemic, we're really looking for inspiration. And I created the ROAR conference and webinar series to provide just that as a way to inspire and aspire. I started at the beginning of last year or the beginning of this year. It feels like it's been a lot longer, right? But I'm so happy that you're with us. We're only able to provide an event like this with the support of our sponsors like State Street, Atrius Health, Mass General Hospital, Biogen, The Identity Narrative, and others. And again, this type of event is a way for us to find inspiration in each other and in others because there is so much isolation for us. I see that Amelia has joined us. Amelia, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and I'm going to change the view so it is on speaker view and we're only looking at the speaker. Amelia, can I have you? I'm going to ask you to unmute. So I'm just waiting for Amelia to unmute. If I can have you. There you go. Yay, Amelia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm going to move to a better location because I found that it's typically my office is it's quite sunny, but I'm going to be moving. So you're looking at my house. But
so I'm going to switch to a type of gallery view. We are live already.
And I'm going to turn on some lights.
This is the best part of having these.
Okay. Well, I saw, oh, this is much better light. There was it was much lighter in my office, and this is better. So
Amelia, let me introduce Amelia before you go on. Amelia Ceja is the president and CEO of Ceja Vineyards. Now, I will tell you that I just got my box of my wine club wines that I get from Ceja Vineyards. It's one of the few vineyards that is owned by a Latino family, yes. And I'm going to have Amelia share with you how she went from working at the vineyards to owning, co-owning with her husband and her family, this impressive, delicious best wine that I've ever had. So I'm going to hand it over to Amelia, and I'm going to set it up so the speaker, which is you, will go on now.
Josefina, thank you so much for inviting me, and I am delighted to be here and to share our story from great growers to now having a highly respected wine brand from our Napa and Sonoma vineyards. And it began in Mexico. It didn't begin here because my partners and I were actually born in Mexico. And my husband, Pedro, is from Michoacan, and I'm from Jalisco, as well as his brother, Armando, who is our winemaker. We met here in Napa as children when we arrived here in 1967. And we fell madly in love with grape growing while working in the vineyards. And now, our grapes are used by many renowned producers in both Napa and Sonoma. And we also launched a brand producing 750 cases back in 2001. So actually next year we'll be celebrating 20 years of commercially selling wine in the United States. And it's a huge accomplishment, and we're very proud of having penetrated this very difficult to penetrate industry where it's governed by Northern European males, and there's wines that come from every continent, seeking for the same shelf space and on-premise and off-premise restaurants and wine shops. So it's so competitive. So how did we do it? Well, it was actually foresight, tenacity, knowledge, and a lot of ganas, desire to succeed. To be successful in any business, one has to know that industry more than anybody else competing in that same industry. And we have, a great value in having started working in the vineyards ourselves. But the advantage that we have is that we understand this industry from the ground up. Because not only did we continue working in the vineyards even once after we learned English, but we also have a technical background from UC Davis by our winemaker, Armando Ceja. So it's not an accident that our wines offer that balance, that beauty, that pair well with everything, all the food that we love, because that was exactly what we set out to do. But we also set out to change the perception of how wine should be enjoyed. And with our Mexican background and also our culture that revolves around the kitchen, we knew from the very beginning that we were going to incorporate how we got here when we launched our brand, and also our food. Because at the time when we launched our brand in 2001, no one was speaking about Mexican cuisine, or for that matter, any other food, but mostly Mediterranean, like French, Italian, Spanish food with wine. Well, we said, no, how about all the food that we love, which is not just Mediterranean cuisine. And my favorite food in the world is Mexican. And I was introduced to cooking since a very young age by my maternal grandmother, Mama Chepa. So I had a lot of experience cooking. And of course, the more I cooked throughout my adulthood, and I became more in love. And once I was introduced to new ingredients, then it became like more of a fusion cuisine, Mexican cuisine, but using a lot of the ingredients that were available here locally in the Napa Valley. So from my farm where I grew up, Las Flores in Jalisco, Mexico, in the highlands of Jalisco, with no running water or electricity, I arrived here in Napa Valley in 1967. And that journey really paved the way for pretty much taking charge of all the obstacles that have arrived, that surface during the building of our brand. Because as immigrants, when we arrived here, we already have left a very sheltered, really protected within our community to get here where I didn't speak the language, I didn't know anyone, and that right there was already a huge border that I crossed, not just physically the border in Mexico, in Calexico, but a bigger border of having to conquer all my fears. So, and when I arrived here, there were very few children whose parents had brought them here, because at that time in the late 60s, it was mostly the men that came to work here. They actually left their families in Mexico, and they would only come here from, let's say, from early spring to late fall, and they would return to Mexico. So Pedro's family and my family were one of the very first families who actually came here, whose parents brought us here with the entire family. So in the school that I was enrolled, they didn't know what to do with me, so I was placed in a special ed class because no one spoke Spanish. And the same happened with my husband. But once we learned English, we were placed in regular classes. But that could have determined the rest of our lives, but it didn't define us, because we knew that what was going to give us that freedom to really pursue our life's fulfillment was through education, because education is what gives one mobility regardless of where we are and regardless of where we go, because we achieved it on our own and we can take it with us. And it gives us such confidence, you know? I mean, that is such a huge difference of why we've been able to succeed in this most competitive industry, because we have the knowledge, the confidence, and the know-how. But we also have the flexibility to be nimble and flexible and against all odds, because we already have experienced them since we were very young, that we will succeed. So when we launched our brand in 2001, and by that time we had already, well, let me just go back a couple of decades. So Pedro and I were married in 1980, and with his family, we immediately started looking for land to buy in Napa and Sonoma. And everyone thought we were crazy because we didn't have any money. And we didn't have a business plan because no one studied business. My husband studied engineering. His brother studied enology, which is a science of winemaking. And I studied history and literature. So between the four of us, and my sister-in-law, she studied something else. So between the four of us, no one had a business degree. We only had that desire that we wanted to own land, and eventually released our own brand of wine. So in the early 1980s, inflation was very high, interest rates were astronomical, and we purchased our first property in 1983. It was like 14.9 or 15.9 flexible interest rate. If we had a business plan, we would have never bought our first property because it didn't make business sense. So for us, it worked out well, but I don't recommend that, not to have a business plan. It's just that we had something bigger than a business plan. And it was that instinct, that desire to succeed, that dream, and to make that dream a reality, the one we had as children. So we purchased our first property in 83. We were able to develop it and planted 15 acres vineyard in Carneros, which Carneros is a sub-ABA American Agricultural Area that straddles in the southernmost part of Napa and Sonoma. Our first harvest in 88, and for roughly the first 10 years, we sold all of our harvest to other wineries in Napa and Sonoma. It wasn't until the mid-1990s that by then we own 113, 115 acres, that we said, well, now we can start thinking about launching our own brand. And in 1999, I left my job in the wine industry, and I spent the entire summer, and we wrote the articles of incorporation. And in the September 1999, we filed our articles of incorporation to launch our Ceja Vineyards brand. And I was elected president of Ceja Vineyards by my partners, Pedro, Armando, and Marta Ceja. And I became the first Mexican-American woman to ever be elected president of a winery in the world, which is so historical because Mexican-Americans don't own land and don't own vineyard. They typically just work the land. They are vineyard workers, or they may work in the cellar, but not being in a position to shape an industry. There were very few women then. Well, there are a few women now. Of all the winemakers at that time in 1999, only actually wasn't even 2%. It was like 1.8 of the winemakers in the world were women, and now it's improved. It's 10%, but there's still so much room for improvement. So we enter an industry that literally there were no, there's no diversity, no women or men of color, and of course even less Mexican farm workers. So it's historical because that was an impetus, and it was a way to pave the way for so many others that are now launching their own brands. We now even have a Mexican-American Vintners Association where members, it doesn't have to come just from Napa and Sonoma, but from as long as 51% of that wine brand is owned by someone who was 51% Mexican American, either born here or who has come from Mexico. So it's much has happened since that fateful September 1999. So in 2001, we launched, and that was a very hard time because by then we did have a business plan, and it was scheduled to be launched in September 2001. And of course, there was that tragedy in New York. And on a fateful day, September 11, because that's also the date that I actually crossed the border as an immigrant with green papers, with a green card, because it was very easy to get a green card then. But so in September, after this horrible tragedy, the wine sales plummeted, but we had only launched 750 cases of wine from our 1998-99 harvest. But immediately the following year, our wine, Ceja Vineyards was selected the best new winery by 90 of the world's most prestigious wine writers in San Francisco. And we were able to increase our production to around 1,500 cases. And we've grown since, but we've remained consistent. It's oscillated between like 6,000 cases and now around 5,000 cases, because we want to make sure that we have complete control in the entire production process, from grape growing all the way into making the wine. And the pandemic put a sort of a little bump on the road, but we are very resilient, and we have been able to maintain sales by like amazing wine-loving fans and friends like Josefina, who is a member of our wine club. And because our tasting room, in California, we had all non-essential businesses closed on March 19th, but we closed our tasting room on March 15th. because we want to make sure that our team was protected as well, and it was the law. So we were only finally able to reopen in end of June with a lot of guideline protocols to just to make sure that everyone who works there and everyone who visits are protected. And we were only allowed to reopen if you had an outdoor area, which fortunately we have a beautiful outdoor area in the middle of the scenic Carneros countryside, the rolling hills, the vineyards. It's lovely. So we are lucky, but the wine industry it's composed of about around 70% of wineries produce less than 5,000 cases like ours. And we're dependent upon direct to consumer sales. So we had to literally change instantaneously to make sure that we remain relevant. Number one, with our current extended familia, our wine clubs really do become part of our extended family, but also to find new consumers. So being that our passion is wine and food, and we launched videos back in 2008, we have a YouTube channel where we actually show food and wine loving fans how to prepare authentic Mexican dishes and pair them with wine. So on a March 31st, on around 2 o'clock, here where I'm at right now on our kitchen countertop, sheltering in place with our now director of sales and marketing, Dalia Ceja, my daughter, who now does have an executive MBA. So the next gen, now we do have someone with a business background, and her husband who works at Pinterest. And we were figuring out what we were going to do, how we were going to maintain that presence, that island presence, but that personal presence, that what makes the Vineyards so special, so that people could still see us, that even though we couldn't be physically together, we could still be together even from a distance, using technology, because we love technology. And small businesses, it's so important to adopt technology, so that we around 2 o'clock, we had been discussing since we closed our tasting room, because that cut that channel of sales, which counts for about 40% of our sales, a very large percentage we sell through our tasting room. And so we said we have to find another way. So we already knew it was going to be through live streaming food and wine, but we hadn't decided what platform to use and when. So we thought probably the following week, but then it was a Tuesday. March 31st was a Tuesday. And my son-in-law, who is also very techie, and he worked at Twitter before, he said, well, why not today? Taco Tuesday is already established. It's a hashtag that is renowned. People look forward to Taco Tuesdays. And Dalia said, well, but we need to polish that idea so that we're ready. And I was just like my son-in-law. I said, no, I think I was inspired too. So I opened my fridge. I had really fresh potatoes we had just harvested, because my husband plants everything in our organic garden outside. And I had longaniza, which is Mexican sausage. And I said, well, I can make a longaniza and potato tacos. And so we immediately posted on our stories, 7 year stories, and all of our own individual platform, like different social media sites, on our personal stories. Then we posted and tweeted, and we said at 5 o'clock, tune in today at 5 o'clock for Taco Tuesday. But we said it's not just going to be about tacos. It has to say vino. It has to say wine in it, because we are in the business of selling wine. So then I thought, well, Taco Tuesday, vino y más, because that encapsulates everything that we are. We're Mexican and we like Spanglish, even though I speak flawless Spanish and English as well, but and it just had this appealing ring to it. So we started advertising it at around 2:30, and at 5 o'clock we were live from right here in this kitchen. And initially my daughter was not even in it, because then we co-hosted it for a number of weeks until she went on maternity leave. So she shot it on her iPhone. I encourage you to go check it out because it is historical. She shot it on her iPhone, and we were live, and we decided we didn't know which platform to use then, and so we used Instagram the very first day, that 31st. But then it was great. I mean, we had such interaction, fans far and wide. They were so excited because we were bringing our lifestyle from this beautiful valley, and I live in the middle of a vineyard, to their own home, to their iPhones, to their laptops, to their family rooms, to their kitchens. And we were doing it in such a way, so embracing, so welcoming, that literally everyone felt, as our mantra is, nuestra casa es su casa. Our home is your home. And so it really was incredibly successful. So we've been doing it since then. And guess what? We're still on target to do the same sales as we did last year. But you see, you have to be nimble. You can't like overthink things. If you feel something instinctual, you just gotta do it. So that has differentiated us from so many other wineries that, of course, have an entire team to do all of their social media, and wildly successful because people are sheltering at home. They're still enjoying amazing wines at home, but it literally, if we had not done anything, that would have been catastrophic, because it would have cut that very important sales that we had. So the big wineries that have representation throughout across our country, well, they didn't suffer because their wines were available at essential businesses like grocery stores, and those remained open because they were deemed essential. So people were still enjoying us, even more wine, really, because you don't have to drive anywhere. You're at home, you're working from home. Well, why not a little glass of Ceja Sauvignon Blanc while working from home?
Let me point out,
yes,
my Vino Rojo from Ceja Vineyards. Can you see that? Amelia, can you tell folks, the website is www.cejavineyards.com. You can be like me and join the wine club, which means you get 3 or more based on what you want, wines every quarter, or you can just purchase the wines directly. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the wine club really quickly.
Yes, of course. And Josefina, since we met, we just like hit it off because tú también eres una mujer chingona. That means a badass. And I love that word. It actually, in Jalisco, where I come from, it's a fantastic word to use for women. We can't be afraid. And yes, we have the Casa Ceja Wine Club, where we have 3 categories, and you can go online at cejavineyards.com, and everything is explained. It's quarterly, and you get, because otherwise we give a lot of value, because we get to know all of our wine club members, and also when we are able to gather back together, hopefully it'll be well, next year, you're going to have to come to one of our quarterly fiestas, because it's all about wine and food, family and friends, where we gather and we actually and it's complimentary to all of our wine club members and the guests. And we have this amazing fiestas at our estate here in Napa and Carneros. And you can also purchase our wines online. We ship everywhere except Mississippi and Utah because they're special. We love for you to consider inviting your family and friends and checking out Taco Tuesday, Vino y Más every Tuesday. And we moved it to Facebook because we have many more thousands followers on Facebook. And then it lives on and we can share it on all of the other platforms. But you are an amazing woman, and roar is what mujeres chingonas hacen, what badass women do, and people that have that instinct to succeed for their families, for their community, and contribute to their families and community. Because we all, once we bring everyone around us with us, it's really when we all succeed. And we've been instrumental in mentoring so many others and in really giving homage to all of the farm workers, essential workers, first responders, because without them we wouldn't be here, and they are the real heroes. And in the wine industry, los campesinos, the farm workers, are the ones that allow us to make these amazing vinos. So I can't wait to toast in person with you, to give you a big hug. And muchísimas gracias por invitarme. I am very, very, very grateful, and I can't wait to meet each and one of you. And please do enjoy this holiday season, sharing a bottle of Ceja or two of our wines. They are actually make life better, and best when you share them with your family and friends, because what else is there?
That's right. That's right. Amelia, thank you so much. And thank you for that inspirational story. I know for me, you're an inspiration. I encourage everyone that's watching this to make sure you go to www.Ceja Vineyards and either join the wine club, which I got my 3 bottles this week, and I was so happy. It was I needed a bottle just to open the box because I was so excited. Thank you so much, Amelia. You are a blessing to all of us and inspiration to all of us as well. We are going to have Dr. Lisa Coleman, who is going to be moderating the panel that we're going to have. Dr. Coleman is from NYU. She's the inaugural Senior Vice President for Global Inclusion and Strategic Initiative. Dr. Coleman also co-hosts a Monday Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Mondays with me, and she's going to moderate the panel that's coming up next. With us, we have Dr. Vanessa Calderon Rosado. Again, all the women here are inspirations. Vanessa, thank you so much for joining us. Vanessa is the CEO of EVA. I'm going to let you introduce a little bit about yourself during the panel, if that's okay. We have Minita Shah-Mara. Minita is shortly going to be on. If she is on, let me just double check. And she is going to be on shortly. And then we have Marcita Thompson. Marcita is the Vice President of Fenway Park Tours at the Red Sox in Boston. Hello, Marcita. Hello, Vanessa. Hello, Dr. Coleman. I'm going to let Dr. Coleman take over.
Thank you.
My recommendation was that they just speak a little bit about themselves, and then I'll let you take it from there.
Sounds good. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Josefina, thank you for inviting me to moderate. Amelia, what a fantastic opening to get us started. I too hope everyone's taking really good care out there. I've been saying, you know, as women, we take care of others. So let's remember to put our oxygen masks on first before we take care of others. And as Amelia said, this is a badass panel. So I'm extremely excited to be with these rock stars. And So we'll just get started here. So why don't I have Vanessa, why don't you start and you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll jump into the questions afterward, and I'll just go, and I'll go with Vanessa, then Marcita, and then we'll wait for other panelists to get online.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you, Josefina, for inviting me to be part of this chingona or badass panel. I was very inspired to listen to your story, Amelia, and how we con ganas, how desire and resilience can make you, even if you don't have a business degree, how you can overcome those obstacles when you really have a goal and you really are hopeful about it. So congratulations, and I can't wait to try out the Ceja Vineyards wine. So thank you also for introducing me to, I'm a wine lover, so this will be great, and I cannot wait either. But just to tell you a little bit of myself before we kick off the conversation in the panel, as Josefina mentioned, I am the Chief Executive Officer of IBA, Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción, which translated to English would be Puerto Rican Tenants in Action. IBA is a community development corporation in Boston that develops develops and preserves affordable housing for low-income families. And in addition to the housing, we do community programs and services to support families in their mobility, social and economic mobility, and also to increase opportunities for them, equity opportunities for them in education, in economic opportunities, and the arts. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico and came to Boston, Massachusetts in the early 90s to do a Ph.D. in public policy, thinking that I was going to return to home to Puerto Rico. And opportunities arise here in the Boston area that led me to stay. And when I completed my PhD, I was focused on a career academic track, looking at policy research, looking at academic work, and that was the track. However, when an opportunity opened up to work more directly in community back in the early 2000s, I took a risk. And I have to say that I never looked back. And I think that in terms of thinking about how we pivot things and how we take risks sometimes that make us feel, apprehensive as to whether or not we will be successful. I think the message for me on my own story and my own journey is how taking risks is important to really move with your life purpose, with your life goals, with the things that you want to accomplish. And I think that's part of definitely my story in really working with this deep sense of purpose and ethos on how do we move the community and how we create more equitable opportunities for especially for Black and Latino communities across Boston and Massachusetts. So I will stop there because I know there will be much more to talk about, and can't wait to hear from Marcita and Minita. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Hi, Marcita.
Hi, how are
Hi.
you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. You look great. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I appreciate your time. And Amelia and Josefina, you have a special place in my heart, and I am so appreciative of your friendship. I'm appreciative of your leadership, of your intelligence, and I'm honored to be on this panel. I truly am. I've started and been in sports for over 20 years, and in many capacities and in many different roles. Starting out as an athlete, transitioning into fundraising, then into business development. So when we think of the sports industry, think of it as a small business, think of it as a big business, but within there you have human resources, you have accounting, you have marketing, you have advertising. So being exposed to so many layers of the business is something that I truly have, grown in, appreciated, and tried to share as much knowledge with the generations that are around me and those that are coming up, and even with my kids, that, it's not just being the professional athlete. You could participate in so many ways in such a powerful way. In that, I have worked with the Boston Red Sox for a couple of decades now, and my current role is Fenway Park Tours, the Vice President of Fenway Park Tours. And what that is it gives us an opportunity to sell Fenway Park as a tourist destination attraction. When you think about bucket list areas, states, countries where people want to see and visit that are historic and walkable, that's something I really focus in on. I want to make it an attractive, intriguing location and experience for everyone to want to come, including students. You have our educational program. So we have truly shifted our business of a tour into 8 different experiences that you could have within the ballpark, from a birthday to a wedding to key. So thinking very creatively on how we can sustain ourselves and be attractive to so many different types of generations and ethnic backgrounds. And it's been, it has been an honor, and it just makes me excited every day because I love to build a business from the ground up and just see it flourish. And there's unfortunately at times that we'll make mistakes, but we learn from those mistakes and we get right back up and figure it out with a good team around you. That's
Thank you Thank you so much, Marcita. That's one of my phrases, actually, is that the difference between an unsuccessful leader and a successful leader is the successful leader learns from her mistakes, brushes herself off, and gets up again. So, right? Yeah. So thank you both. And I know we're waiting for our other panelists, but we're going to start the questions, and then we will let her come in and introduce herself when she arrives. So going back to, and this piggybacks on some of the things that actually that Amelia talked about, but tell us a little bit about, in case people don't know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so tell us a little bit about how you've been navigating this pandemic as a leader. And in particular, tell us a little bit about technology, right? Amelia talked a little bit about technology and what she's had to do. So tell us a little bit about how you've been, actually, and we know that technology has been accelerated during this remote learning, remote engagement opportunities. So, so tell us a little bit about that as well.
Sure. Let me just give a little bit of a crack and about how we pivoted using technology. So as I mentioned earlier, the work of EBA is really community-based. We work with low-income families, both who live in our housing portfolio or low-income families that access our programs and services, even though they may not live in our housing units. So when we shut down everything in March, and everyone, went into their corners, into the living rooms, some offices, kitchen tables, dining room tables to work from home. It was a true challenge for an organization like ours that is so community facing, that is so people facing, that supports people on a daily basis, face to face, whether through a preschool program, whether through youth development programs, whether financial empowerment programs, whether through our resident services programs, our elderly programs. So for us was a true challenge. How do we connect with our community, especially in a time of heightened need, at a time where there's this health threat, at a time in which people are losing jobs or reduced hours in their jobs, at a time in which people have facing even deeper food insecurity. So for us was really a team of people who not only are very committed and dedicated to the work and the mission of the organization, but also creative in engaging the community in different ways. We started clearly first by phone, connecting with people by phone, doing wellness checks, wellness calls to ensure that they had what they need. And immediately, as part of those wellness checks, we looked at 4 particular areas. Health, how are they doing? Are they being affected by COVID-19? Can we help them troubleshoot that? Second, economic stability of the household. Have they lost jobs? Can we help them apply for unemployment or rent assistance, etc.? Third, food security. Do they have food in the household? Can they access food? Can we help them with that? And fourth, and very important to your point, Lisa, technology. What is the technology infrastructure in the home? Do they have access? Do they have computers, laptops, Chromebooks? What do they have? And so those checkpoints helped us understand the need and help us troubleshoot for that need, and also helped us understand how we can start shifting our work and our phone calls to more of a technology platform using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, all these new platforms that are now part of our lexicon. So that's how we kind of pivoted. But it was challenging because first was very hard to have that first connection with the families that we serve.
You bring up really important points about the challenges, Vanessa, and particularly like when we think about the digital divide and the issues around broadband access versus mobile access, right? And how people are accessing. So I think it's important, as you were talking, just for people to remember that when they're working with people, even now, the way that people are accessing is so differentiated. And then of course, their home spaces are incredibly differentiated as well. And we know that as women returned home, some women returned to unsafe spaces as well. So thank you so much for highlighting those important issues. Marcita, tell us a little bit about the same question, a little bit about your work and pivoting in this pandemic, and then obviously the technological pieces as well.
Sure. In Fenway Park Tours, we see over 300,000 visitors a day. We lead all teams in Major League Baseball by attendance and revenue, and are very proud of that. And we were just under a month opening day when our office is closed. So opening day means a lot to those in Boston, to any sports fans who know it's the first game of the season, and we're getting ready for what's our big holiday, if you will. So once the office is shut down, it was alarming for my staff. It was also alarming for our organization as a whole. We thought maybe we'll be back in 2 weeks. Not a big deal. This is gonna, brush over. I think we all
did.
We all had that feeling. We'll be back in 2 weeks. It's all right. Just leave my drink on my desk, But that certainly didn't happen. And sadly, there has been loss of life and financial stability and mental stability and relationship building. And how do we do that now? So what we started to do was to start with our staff, and that was having weekly Zoom calls. I have a master's in Zoom. I'm working on my Ph.D. now. I still forget to hit the mute button sometimes, but I'm just letting you know. I have a master's now. I'm pretty proud of it.
I'm laughing so hard because it's so true.
In 6 months, I got a master's. So we started to do more Zoom calls. Then we thought, what else? Because the people that are teammates of mine, they're very much so needing the human interaction because they're used to seeing 1,200 people a day, and then you're going to zero and you're at home. So we started to do a department blog, and that blog was an internal communication to see what people are doing in their community, what they're working on at home. So to just keep us in contact with each other, to keep the spirits up, the support, the morale, which is important because then the next step is, what will we do for our staff? What will we do for our customers? So we realized the project we put on the back burner, the virtual tour back burner, that's my heavy sigh there. It shouldn't have been on the back burner because you never know when you're going to need it. So that project became our priority, but we didn't have access to the ballpark. The ballpark was completely closed. Obviously for safety reasons, everyone had to close their businesses in Boston, especially because of the high rates that we had of positive cases. So we go back to, so what do we do now? So our virtual tour became our tour guides, creating a platform for tour guides to give a PowerPoint presentation of some of the historic locations within the ballpark, talking with people through Zoom and really giving it a personal touch. So we really had to work on changing how we were going to make up for the back burner idea. I keep saying that back burner because it's for the rest of my career now, I'm gonna be thinking, don't wait on anything, just do it. So we now have our virtual tour. We use something new as well to the league, which we have a drone tour, and I'm psyched about that because nobody else has that again. So we have a drone tour where people are able to, and it's animated through the ballpark. It's very, very cool. The first of its kind in MLB. So we've adjusted. We are still working hard on having new experiences, and we'll continue to do so, but it's trying to be our best every day for the customers who just want to be in the ballpark. They just want to come and see it. It's a sense of normalcy in Boston to just go to the ballpark, to walk through. A lot of our visitors are repeat visitors, and they'll bring friends and family back for the second and third time. And we're so appreciative of that. And we have to do our best to make sure we keep them engaged. We keep them excited about coming to the ballpark, whether it's for a game or it's for a tour. We have to keep them engaged and interested. So that's what we've done to this point.
Thank you so much, Marcita. And I think that's so crucial, right? Because I think you're trying to recreate a feeling, right? A feeling for people. And so how do you do that? And so thank you for those helpful tips. I've been saying for a lot of us, right? It's how do we find possibilities in these moments? And the back burner possibilities now that we've brought to the fore, right, allow, I think, many of us to think about those accelerated places, as you said, that where we can accelerate now. We put some of those things on the back burner, but now that we've taken them off the shelves, it's given us some new insights into maybe we need to accelerate some of those things more quickly. So that's
Absolutely.
really terrific. And I love this idea about the drone tour. I mean, I'm not in Boston anymore, but when I come back up, I'm definitely coming to visit. So thank you so much. And Minita, thank you for joining us. So why don't we combo you and let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your role. And then my first question, which, we can sort of pivot into this. My first question was really around, as I said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We all know that. And so tell us a little bit about how you, as a leader, have been navigating this pandemic. And in particular, tell us a little bit about how you have been using technology, right? We've seen the accelerated use of various forms of technology. So tell us about that integration into your work. We can't hear you. Tech people, I think we need an unmute. Minita, will you speak again? Say something. Unmute. Maybe you can call in.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I promise you, you're on my side of the world, you are unmuted. Minita, if you can hear me, are you good?
Maybe try the volume on your computer.
Yeah, you can call in on your computer, or if you want to, you can call in on your phone and it'll link you. Okay, so we will wait. We will continue on, but I'll come back to you. Don't worry.
All right. She said,
okay.
Continue, and I am here in the background. Okay.
Thank you, Fina. Thank you. We always know you're back there watching out for us and keeping us on the straight and narrow, as it were. So let's talk a little bit, and this will I'm going to skip and just piggyback, because this is really about the last 6 months. So then Minita can fold that into her answer as well. So tell us a little bit about the last 6 months. So not just as a leader.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
We can hear you now, Minita. Minita, can you hear me? No? Okay. So tell us a little bit about the last 6 months and how your life has changed, right? Not just your leadership life, but I know for a lot of us, right, our lives have changed in some ways. So tell us a little bit about that. And for our viewers out there, tell us how you're navigating those changes. So let's shake it up a little bit and start with Marcita.
Great. I try to deal with things in a positive way. I try to, and with humor. So I started out thinking, oh boy, oh, the kids in school and how's this going to happen? So I dressed up the first day, that Monday back was the 13th, the 16th, when we were learning school wouldn't be in, March 16th. And I had on the University of Mom. I made this handwritten sign and I came downstairs with my laptop. I told them they need to be at the dining room table at 9 a.m. Like, I have to figure this out. Like, we have to make this engaging. I am not great with being patient or like being a stay-at-home mom. I know my lane and I stay in it. So I said, I came down, I had borrowed my husband's glasses, couldn't see a doggone thing, but I was trying to, make this into a positive experience. Like, we're going to be home for a while. Let's work this out. So we started that way. They're like, no, I can't, Mom. I can't. This is not going to work. I'm like, what? You don't like it? But to start on the right foot of like, instead of this is going to be tough, what are we going to do? I want to make sure that, I have a senior in high school and I have a 7th grader. And so those, they're pretty independent. My son's independent, who's the senior in high school, and my daughter's as well. But when it comes to motivation, inspiring, because for me, I knew what the outlook is. The outlook is, this is a mental challenge for all of us, in relationship building. So starting out, we did that one day, and then I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore anyway. So I can't fake the funk any longer. They went upstairs, they went to their rooms and started working from their desks there. But then we started to do journals. I made them do their journals. And I wasn't reading them, but it's, again, getting out what you're thinking in your mind, right? Because the uncertainty with me at the office was I was still trying to pull it together for myself, my teammates, and for my direct report, so that stability there is, now it's on shaky ground because we don't see each other every day, but to maintain a consistency of communication. So I set up meetings 3 times a week with my direct reports. We continue those now with the staff. It's a monthly Zoom call, but it is a challenge. It has been a challenge for me to truly stay focused on optimism, just being positive. That is a job for me daily, and I talk with my girlfriends and my executive committee, my executive board, I call them. And, there's days when we're like, whew, I am not in the mood to talk today, and that's okay. As they say, it's okay not to be okay. And through the last, 6 months, I've just continued to work on trying to prioritize staying positive. And not every day I can. Nope, can't do it every day. But I know that I have to work on it every day.
Thank you so much, Marcita. That's so, staying positive right now and trying to, I think it's hard for so many people. So thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for being, for sharing that about being vulnerable around that, right? That it is hard to stay positive and navigate it every day. And
sorry, if I can add one more thing, especially once we had the murder of George Floyd happen in May, that changed the whole scenario for me and my family as a Black woman. And it made it even more difficult and emotional. And so we've been working on social justice issues within the Boston Red Sox organization before I got there, and we're continuing to do it even more so now. But that layered on the pandemic, I believe, has broke so many people with the spirit of stability, and expectation of what to have next. So I don't want to miss out on recognizing that as well, because that was very challenging.
Very important points, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic, and then with the increased anti-Black violence. At the beginning of this pandemic, we saw xenophobia directed toward Pacific Islanders and people of Asian descent. These things aren't new, but it does show what happens during, right, these moments of crisis. And to your point, the exacerbated anxieties, pressures on families has just been devastating for a lot of people, actually, and to be able to navigate it. So thank you for bringing up those important points. And also thank you for bringing up childcare. right? Childcare and elder care as women returned home. We've seen the reports, whether that's in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, and the pressures that that women are experiencing. And I always say, I usually open my talks by saying our new colleagues are our spouses, our children, our dogs. I have a new dog, and sometimes she just hurls herself at me in the middle of Zoom, and I'm like, nothing I can do, right? So I appreciate you bringing all those things up as well, right? So Vanessa, same question. Tell us a little bit about the last 6 months for you and navigating all that's been happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks again, Lisa. And I will echo pretty much every word Marcita said, except that I don't have school-age children. I'll tell you about that in a second. But in looking back and reflecting at 2020, in trying to insert some humor into it, I'm sure you all remember when we were about to, receive the year 2000, and everyone was concerned about Y2K and technology, and everyone was freaking out. This is the end of the world. And I keep joking that I think we missed it by 20 years because this is the end of the world as we know it. Actually, it's not. And that's the good news within all the bad news that surround us. So 2020 certainly has been a very difficult year for everyone. For me, at a personal level, it has been pretty devastating because it started with, earthquakes shattering Puerto Rico, my homeland, at the beginning of the year, and that having a number of impacts in people that I know and that I care about back home. And then later in February of this year, my mother-in-law passed away before the pandemic hit for unrelated health issues. And then March, and on top of it, I have two children, two boys. Both of them were seniors last year, one in college and one in high school. So all the plans that we had for their respective graduations turned into something else, because then we had two virtual graduations and all those plans got upended. And then, of course, pivoting the work, supporting our organization, ensuring that the organization had the resources to continue to do the important work that we do, and the murder of George Floyd. So I think all of these were kind of insults over insults that clearly at a personal level touch you and are prone to take your hope and optimism away. But one of the things that I have learned through all of this is just really how do we face these macro and microaggressions that are coming at us with an open heart, very mindful of what's happening and really hopeful, not really losing track and sight that there's a better future and that we all can be part of that better future. And that really kind of fills me and keeps me going and motivated and positive about what can it be and what can I do to make it be. And I think that's a great engine for me in staying focused and staying positive and staying hopeful that that we shall overcome indeed. So that's certainly, it's been difficult, but also despite of all of those things, I look around and I look at my new coworkers like you, Lisa, and I look at my fridge and I have food at the table and I have toilet paper and I have, my basic needs are covered. And so many families do not have those blessings, do not have that privilege, do not have that opportunity. So I am blessed. I am privileged to be able to count with those blessings. And I use that to motivate me to continue to fight and to work for equity, for more equity for our community, so people do not have to feel the impacts of these two pandemics, both COVID-19 and racism, in such way that really can demolish their livelihoods and their families. So I think there's so much more to do, but for me, it's just staying mindful, keeping my faith and my hope that we will come stronger out of this at the end.
Thank you so much for that, Vanessa. And I think it's so important, all that you raise, and in particular, right, trying to keep hope alive during times when it's really hard. And as you said, during 2 pandemics, right? And but I also appreciate you also talking about the disappointment, right? The disappointment with your kids in terms of graduations and the things that you have to do, right, to sort of then reestablish hope and reestablish commitment and engagement. So thank you so much. And I think so many of us, I don't know about the rest of you, but I too feel very privileged and blessed. And I'm very thankful that I have the ability to be in a home and then be able to help others, right? So Minita, we're going to turn to you now. And I hear that, yeah, I think you've gotten it all worked out. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you've been navigating these last 6 months, because we've all had a lot to navigate. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Oh no. We did hear you though there briefly in the background. There was some noise. I heard you. No. No sound. Oh, so sad.
I think the phone might be on mute.
Yeah, her phone is on mute.
Your phone is on mute. Is your phone number the 510 number? 510-418?
Yeah, it's on mute.
It's on mute. So I don't know if you can unmute the phone or if it's mute. Let me see if I can unmute you. I don't think I'm a host.
Okay, they're saying I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I think there was a question related to technology, and I'm a little bitter right now, so I'm
that's okay. Listen, we can backtrack. So these were the questions. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we've been talking a little bit about what we've had to navigate over the 6 months. And so one was about, like, as a leader with technology, and then the second question was just navigating your life. So
yeah, well, a huge honor to be here today. Thank you, Lisa, for leading this conversation, Josefina for bringing us together, and Vanessa and Marcita already learning from you. So I have the privilege right now of leading organization effectiveness and global diversity and inclusion for Biogen. We're a large biotech company with around 8,000 employees globally, focused on neurological diseases. And so organization effectiveness is very vague. So it sits within HR and sort of pulls together some functions that I think are, I'm biased, but sort of interesting. They're people relations or employee relations, talent management, organization performance, culture, people analytics. And then I have a wonderful team of organizational development consultants, and obviously the global diversity and equity and inclusion work. And so I'd say that I had an interesting journey over the past 6 months where I got COVID early on in the end of February, before anyone really knew kind of how things were playing out, and unfortunately passed it on to my partner. And I think that in some ways that completely reoriented my experience. Unfortunately, they got very sick. They were hospitalized at a time where no one knew much. We could have known more, but given everything that was going on in Asia, but we in the U.S. system didn't know as much. And so I share that experience with you because I think as a leader, who I am today is so materially impacted by that experience, from a place of empathy, first of all, from a place of, I've been blessed and fortunate in my career and had a lot of, myself connected to my accomplishments. And I think more implicitly than explicitly, but as I started to really see so clearly, like right in front of me, what was the most important thing. And it sounds so cliche because people always say this, but it made very clear for me that the health of my loved ones was going to be the most important thing. And through the next 6 months, but also as a leader in terms of my teams and how I lead with my teams and leading with how they were as whole people, from a physical health, from an emotional health perspective, that would be the driver. And recognizing that how you are today doesn't mean that that's how you're going to be tomorrow, based, Vanessa and Marcita, what you shared in terms of what plays out for the day, right? And so that's been really incredible. And because of this shift for me, Josefina and I were talking, I take walks every day. I notice things like smelling the earth after a rainy day. And those that know me, I am not that person. But it really has helped me to be like, this is what it means to be here right now on this earth. And then with all that's going on with the environment and climate and the pandemic and the incredible pieces around racial inequity, social injustice, I feel like we have to first and foremost take care of ourselves. We are givers, whether it be to our families, whether it be to our careers, whether it be, to others that we're advocating for within our organizations and more broadly. And as women of color, this piece around taking care of yourself and being with yourself and just in that silence is something that, I wish people could hear me 6 months ago, because these are words that would never have come out of my mouth. And I would say this experience has been transformative.
Thank you so much, Minita. I started by saying we need to put our oxygen masks on first. And part of the reason I've started saying this is so many of us, particularly women and women of color, we're taking care of so many others. And we have to take care of ourselves. And to your point, I wouldn't have said that 6 months ago either, right? I think many of us have had to rethink our leadership practices, how we're caring for our teams, to go back to what you're saying, right? I've had on my team, I have a pretty large team, and of the 15 people on my team, 5 of them have had COVID. And so I've had to really, think about how I'm working with that team, et cetera, and how we're caring for others in these spaces of work. And lastly, I'll say this too, right? And working from home is not easy for a lot of us. And so, helping our teams manage that and allow Zoom burnout and all of those things. So thank you for bringing up those very important areas for all of us to consider. And so, okay, so let me turn to my next question, which is really, let's think about a little bit about people are thinking that there might be a vaccine. All right, so there may be a vaccine. And so one of the things that I think about is the future, right? The post-COVID-19 moments and what that's going to look like. So tell us a little bit about how you all are thinking about the post-COVID-19 moment, what you've learned, what you will engage, and how you're thinking about this now. I mean, we don't know when that vaccine's coming, but let's say, in 2021 at some point. So why don't I go back, and I'll start with you, Vanessa, and then I'll come to Minita, and then I'll come to Marcita, and I'm gonna, shake it up a little bit now. So, all right.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe we should start with Minita to talk from the Biogen perspective. But yeah, we're all hopeful that we will be able to reach the point in which we have a vaccine available sometime in 2021. It's unclear as to when. And that brings a number of issues again around equity, about how do we ensure that the vaccine is available, especially for 2 communities that have been disproportionately affected, like Black and Latino communities across the nation, certainly in Boston. So how do we roll out the vaccination plan in a way that is equitable and really start where the need is the biggest? So I think that certainly is on my mind as to how do we prepare to rolling out the treatment for the virus. But regardless, even if the vaccine is ready to be rolled out tomorrow and we create those plans, equitable plans for its rollout, I think we're in the long haul for this recovery. We even if we have a vaccine, we can start reopening businesses at the rate that they were before the shutdown. It will take some time to bring people back to work. It will take some time to get people to recover from the economic losses that they have experienced and faced from this pandemic. So I think this is what we, and of course, this all will happen within our national leadership context, our national election context. So there are still a lot of unknowns around which direction we will move, what things will happen. So I think that as leaders, we should really think about this at least for 2 more years, that we will be really engaging in different ways of doing things, continuing to be adaptable and flexible to roll with the punches that are thrown at us for the next 2 years as we roll out a vaccine plan, as we roll out an economic recovery plan for this nation and for our communities, and as we establish policies and allocate resources to address the crisis and the pandemic of racism in this country. I think that, this is a reckoning for us right now in this moment in history. And I think we ought to use this moment to really influence policies, practices, programs, communities, philanthropy, resources, government resources, every possible resource that is available, to reallocate them differently and to really rethink how do we move beyond the challenge that we face in this country with racism, as you mentioned, Lisa, with xenophobia. So there's a lot of challenges ahead of us. And I see that we're on this working plan for at least 2 more years.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And thank you for bringing up those important equity issues as we think about recovery, because I think, right, we know we have to think about those and being flexible, right? I mean, I think 2 years is probably pretty accurate. So Marcita, same question, or no, let's go to Minita. Sorry, same question. And from the Biogen perspective, maybe you have more insight.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so, we're not as, we're focused on neurological diseases. And so sort of where we're making really the investment is in spaces like Alzheimer's and dementia and, sort of kind of in those spaces, Parkinson's, ALS, et cetera, MS. But I would say that your point around, what are we getting out of this? And when we come out of this, what's the pieces to hold on to and what are the pieces that may be different? First of all, I just have to say this, I'm sure it's been already said, that get out the vote. All of us have to absolutely do our job in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I think like that trumps everything right now, truly, because policies that are going to all the points that you made, Vanessa, I think that we are talking about systemic change. And so I think for me, the post-pandemic world is we're in this mindset right now truly around reimagining. And we're seeing it in the workplace around, wow, why did we need to have all these particular meetings in a certain way face-to-face? And why did we need to engage customers in this way face-to-face? What is the value of actually having a lot more digital capability? And using that mindset has really helped us to be more effective from a global perspective. So now when I have my team meetings and everyone is even on the screen, I'm not gearing unintentionally to my US colleagues, that I truly am, from an inclusion perspective, driving a lot more effective team effectiveness and work. And so I think that there's something around this time of disruption that I hope that we hold on to from a digital capability perspective. I also think that, mental health and it being a part of work life and continuing to be pushed forward as important as anything else related to work effectiveness. I think I'm starting to see more of that shift happening. It's not easy culturally, but I think that's a lot of the work that we have ahead of us too, and I'm hoping will be pulled through into the post-COVID world. I think that, to your point, the resilience in knowing that this moment in time is so much bigger than ourselves. Like, I think we got really assured of a couple of things. One is that we could keep abusing this planet and that it would just keep taking the abuse. And I think that there's a piece that's, coming through there. Similarly, on the racial equity or inequities piece, we're seeing that this history of over 400 years, we're at the time of reckoning. And Vanessa, you took the words out of my mouth. And it's really time for that deeper systemic change. And I would say that we as women of color are, uniquely positioned to use our superpower, and the superpower of many of us have had experiences of being a one or the only, or coming from a place of flexing your style in order to be influential. And all of that, I think, has built tremendous resilience and strength. So I don't want to lose that we're uniquely positioned to have tremendous impact coming out of this, with my earlier point around and continue to take care of ourselves, because a lot of this can come at a toll too. So I want to see more leadership, more representation from those that look like ourselves coming out of the pandemic. And I think that I feel a little bit more fearless. I don't know about everyone else, but we have our health, and so it's okay to be unpopular and to have those points of view to really drive change in a way that maybe 6 or 8 months ago I would have, been a little bit softer on some topics. So that's been freeing in a lot of ways also.
Thank you, Minita. I think you bring up such important points, and particularly around that global piece, right? We're seeing more engagement in this what we used to call, synchronous and asynchronous. And so, planes in the air, we've seen, the drop, and thinking about our ozone levels. When we look at Italy, we have a campus there, and those canals, are clear, and the birds have returned. And so these climate issues, I think, are really, really crucial. And I'm going to actually come back to some of these questions around the racial pandemic, because I have a question around that. So I'm going to come back to that. But thank you very much. And lastly, of course, these issues around mental health. I think that I cannot say enough about the opportunity for us to really think about mental health and our neurodiverse communities, particularly during this pandemic, and particularly because you work in that area, and really thinking about, we just hired someone on the neurodiverse spectrum to work with us, particularly to think about disability and disability inclusive culture and inclusion. So thank you for those important comments. And now turning to you, Marcita, tell us a little bit on the same.
So I absolutely agree with Minita and Vanessa with all of their points. I think from a entertainment perspective, we are going to see a significant shift of what it is going to look like in the future. Our ballpark holds over 38,000 people. It's one of the smallest ballparks in Major League Baseball. We will probably be at about 20% of capacity. We are the oldest ballpark at the same point. We're 108 years old, so we have different restrictions and guidelines as to what we can do within our venue. So the restriction of our fan base on how that will look, how many people will be welcomed back, which then affects our merchandise sales, then affects our concessions, that all feeds into payroll and how that affects our employees. And if we are able to retain the same number in all of those areas of our business, will we come back? Absolutely, we will. We as a country will absolutely come back. I believe it's going to take a little bit more than 2 years from the entertainment sporting industry, because even though you may see other states that are going 100% out, Florida's back to nothing, as if there's nothing happening. And that's okay. I'm not judging. I'm just using them as an example. It's that we have to be very careful and cautious on how we're protecting ourselves, our fans, our employees. And so to me, it's going to be a norm to probably take temperatures where we go into the grocery store or shopping mall. I mean, I think that's going to be wearing masks, that's going to continue. I think that we are not knowing all of the information, because I'm those people. We don't know all the information. So it's hard to predict when we don't know all of the information, but I can tell you just from my area of the business that we're going through a significant financially and ethically challenging time, and it will take some time, but it's going to take everyone's effort to be a part of it, and it's going to feel good when we're through it, but we definitely, all of us have our work cut out for us, for sure.
Thank you for talking about the long tail of this, because I think you're right. I think for many industries, it's going to be 2 years and longer. And if we think about the impact on the hotel, entertainment, all of those industries, we're seeing great impact. And quite frankly, we know some businesses won't recover, right? Or won't recover in the same way. And
Even
so
conferences.
Oh no. And, you know, I was just thinking, we hold our graduation in Yankee Stadium,
Ooh,
right? And right, because we're the biggest college with 85,000 plus, and so right, and when we have graduation, we need that. So I was just thinking about that, and we couldn't do that this year. And then, you know, there were these ideas to turn it into a drive-in. I mean, just right. So really thinking about to go back to something I think you said earlier, also about flexibility. We have a word we're using at NYU called nimblelocity. We're trying to be nimble and accelerated. We, you know, in academia, we make up words.
I like that.
You know, you can take it, nimblelocity. So, right, we're moving forward. So, so this brings me to, I think this will probably be, I'm sure, you know, Josefina keeps me in check and gives me directions, and I follow everything that she says to do. So I think this may be, we're circling in on some of our, maybe our last question, if not the last, maybe the second to last. So is this my last question? Yeah.
We're good with time, but we do have Danielle waiting in the background to join us for our mindful meditation.
Okay, so let me finish. I'll ask you this question, which is, and you all have touched on this. And hi, Daniel, it's good to see your face. And so you've all touched on this, but how do we ensure that these moments, right, these moments in this address to whether it's xenophobia, the anti-Black sentiments globally, right, the racism, we've seen protests. We saw protests for 38 consecutive days. We saw global protests. So how do we work together as leaders or collectively to ensure this just isn't a moment, that it's actually a movement, that we don't, right, the next pandemic, right, like SARS and all of those, right, the next pandemic, that we don't revisit the secondary pandemic, right, the overlaying pandemic of racism and xenophobia and all of the other things. So tell us a little bit about how you see your work attaching that, but what we can do to collectively together, because I'm sure some of our audience members are out there. And I'll end by saying this, because I work in diversity, equity, inclusion work, one of the things I'm always surprised by is when communities get attacked, instead of us joining together, we go and we isolate, right? And so each community goes into our camps sometimes. So how can we collectively perhaps come together too? All right, and I will start. Why don't I start with you, Minita, because I haven't started with you, so I'll start with you.
Great, thanks, Lisa. This has gone by really, really quickly. And so I have to say that, you know, in June, as a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner, I looked at myself candidly and said, you know, what more can I be doing? What could I be doing differently? What have I missed? You know, where has there been progress, and where has there not been progress how should I operate differently? And it's so interesting with what you say, because I started to look at myself in the context of my community, and I'm South Asian ethnically, and we convened a group of now I think over 50 South Asians, and have organized a longer term investment around Brown for Black. And there's multiple components around it. One is sort of educating ourselves, educating our family members of these institutional issues and these systemic issues, but then also really resourcing and funding the nonprofits that are Black owned and Black led that are doing this hard work and have been for so long. And so that to me, it felt like a perfect segue to the point you made is what could we be doing differently? And I also just can't help but recognize that there's this fundamental piece around empathy that as D and E and I has gotten so politicized, unfortunately, that our common humanity has really gotten lost, and that opportunity for more conversation across lines of difference and building more understanding across lines of difference continues to get harder and harder. Some of it's just by the nature of us being virtual, but some of it really is around be this setup that we're working in within the US where it's becoming more divisive through the politicization, right? And so that piece, I think, is the empathy seems really basic, but I don't want to lose that as a common glue that continues to be important. And then I don't want to lose the piece around balance and taking care of ourselves. We're like vessels for this work. And it takes a toll because we don't just do it from an academic and an intellectual sense. We do it from our hearts and from our life experiences and from our care. So I want to balance like the continuing to build your the body of advocacy with looking at your own community and more broadly with building more empathy with the balance. That the work also takes a toll and needs to be balanced with self-care too. To drum a point home always.
Thank you so much, Minita, and thank you for bringing up the intra and inter, right, community work, because I think both of those are so important, and obviously, right, and then thinking about how we, how we're more connected, and I love this idea of thinking about what we've missed, the gap areas, right? Because so many of us, and I think this goes back to something you were saying earlier, I don't know about you, but I was moving so fast, sometimes I was accelerated, but I wasn't always looking at the gap areas. And this has allowed us, I think also for some moments of reflection, right? To reflect and to reflect on where we want to be and move forward. So thank you very much, Minita. Let me turn to Vanessa now. Same question, movement, moment.
Sure. I think the first thing, to use your analogy, Lisa, I think we need to put our oxygen masks first, because clearly this is not a sprint, and we need to stay healthy and strong to continue the fight. Like Minita said, I think that it's important for us, especially those of us who are not Black and African American, but also belong to a brown class or community, to coalesce with other groups, and more important, to listen and learn. Understanding that we do not know all the answers, that we may not know all the history, especially those of us who weren't born here in the mainland continental US, to really learn and from the start, from history, and to listen and let the groundswell of community movement to lead. Oftentimes as leaders, with the best intentions, we have this instinct of jumping in and, really kind of do, right? Go do, we're doers, and we do it with best intentions and with, full hearts. And in doing so, sometimes we neglect to really hear the people that are most affected by it, the communities that are most impacted by it. So I think that sense of listening and learning is very critical and important in this moment for us leaders.
Thank you so much for that. I couldn't agree more. Listening and learning is so very crucial. And I actually say this a lot. You can't be a good leader if you're not a good follower. Right? So many people think being a leader is it, but if you don't know how to follow, then you actually can't work with your team. You can't help other people sort of grow and build capacity. And as leaders, we're capacity builders, hopefully, right? There's this quote about the heroic manager of the past was just to build their own capacity, but the leader of today is to build other people's capacity. So it goes back to that oxygen mask. So thank you so much, Vanessa. And Marcita, same question. Tell us a little bit about this movement moment.
Yeah, thank you. I am getting ready to hop off of this this call for our social justice, equity, and inclusion advisory committee that I'm on. So it is, to me, it is a consistent conversation and dialogue that has to last longer than 2 years or longer than the 15 minutes. Yes, and it has. There are many people's shoulders that we stand on, right? Who will need our shoulders as well. So the education, the information that we have to do on our own is extremely important. It's so important in teaching the generations behind us the same thing, to educate, learn about the policies, learn about what your state's doing. Be aware, be knowledgeable of everything that you are passionate about, that we need to make this world a more equitable place, is important. I mean, but we can't spread ourselves so thin that we're trying to do everything. I'm trying to do everything. I can't, I know I can't, I try. And what that does is it dilutes my energy. And I need to be able to give 110% to every project I put my name to. That's what I've always wanted to do. That's what I've been taught. And I had to take a step back. And like we've said, you know, getting in a walk, getting in a hot Pilates. I have had to accept my COVID curves, and I'm okay with it. It's a new word, you could take it. It's a new term. I have my COVID curves. I'm fine with them. I'm happy about them, but I also know that in the spirit of having a balance, you need to walk, get fresh air. I'm usually trying to find the vitamin D. You see me dodging around here, trying to get that glare off of you. I'm usually searching for it. I am looking for it because I need it. I need it for my psyche. And that is so important to the energy that is needed for this long-standing movement, this never-ending movement. So we have to be present, which we've talked about, engaged, communicating within our circles, bringing people with us through conversation, and learning while we're doing it as well. So that to me is how we could possibly continue keeping it, a topic, actionable items all the time, and engaging ourselves and participating in every facet of our life that we are passionate about to help others too. So,
thank you so much,
yeah.
Marcita. And I think it's so important for us to stay energized. We do have to find that balance that all of you have talked about. And that balance will look different for different people.
Sure.
So whether it's walking, finding the vitamin D, whatever it is, right? I know I'm walking. I'm doing walking meetings now, right? I've pivoted to the old phone calls sometimes versus Zoom all day. So whatever we can do. And I think that's really important for women of color. We know the differential health disparities, right? And the impact on women of color when we don't take care of ourselves, and what that means, not just for us individually, but for our families and communities, right? So to everyone out there, I hope we continue to take good care. We do stand on the shoulders of so many, so thank you for bringing that up, Marcita. Thank you for all the community members who've made this possible today. And let's end with this: empathy and learning. Empathy and learning. You are so right. Design thinking, the model starts with empathy. We know that the best leaders during COVID-19 have been women. We only need to turn to Jacinda in New Zealand and in Taiwan, and we're seeing which leaders are outpacing. And why are they outpacing? They're outpacing because they believe in empathy, and they've been listening and learning from their constituents on how to navigate this very difficult pandemic, and educating themselves and others to go back to all of the things that you all said about learning during this time. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Josefina. Thank you, Right Media. And I know we're heading into an energy renewal moment right now with Daniel, and a healing moment. So that's also really important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. You rock, Lisa.
I invite everyone here to make sure that they stay for the virtual networking if you can. I am going to invite Daniel. Thank you guys for the panel discussion. It was so important to talk about where we are as leaders, where we're heading, and the things that we need to do in order to be okay. So Daniel, I'm going to encourage you to turn on your video. Let's see where, there you go. Thank you so much. And I'm going to move the folks that are, give me 1 second. There we go. Daniel, hello. Thank you for being here with us.
It's great to be here on this rainy day in the Andes. We love our rainy days.
That's right. So I'm going to step off in a second, and I'm going to let you take the whole screen. But I wanted to invite you to give us a guided meditation, a guided tour, because I think we all need it. And sometimes it's good to know how to practice something, and having somebody like yourself do it that we can see and engage with is essential. So thank you for joining us.
You bet. I'm excited about that.
So jump off.
Okay.
In the background, just so you know, I'm in the background, but
am I getting graded?
That's right. Be good. All right.
All right. Well, listen, folks. So today we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness. And when you think about guided meditation, I'm sure that some of you are probably thinking like I'm going to have birds or an ocean or something like that, but that's not what I'm going to do during this very short meditation. What I want to show you is how sometimes we have to release energy in order to find our places, find our place in a quiet moment so that we can hear our thoughts, right? I wrote in my first book, it's not whether or not the universe speaks to me, it's whether or not I can hear him or her through the chatter of my own mind. And so we're going to do what's called a laughter meditation. I wrote in my most recent book, Radical Mindfulness, 6 steps to being radically mindful. What is mindfulness, real quick? Mindfulness is just being aware in the moment, being aware of your breathing, being aware of eating, walking, whatever it may be, but being present in the moment. And so the very first thing in the 6 steps, which I will go through all of them before we're done, is that we get centered in the moment. And for some people, that might be meditation. We're going to do a laughter meditation. That could be yoga. That could be breathing. The simple task of just and just allowing yourself to relax. Another one I absolutely love is aromas. Essential oils. I use essential oils, lavender, lemongrass. And then my favorite, as Josefina knows, I love Palo Santo, sacred wood. You can look that up. It's beautiful scent. It's it's from the frankincense family. And so you want to anchor yourself in the moment, because when we get into a place where our mind are rushing, we're not in the moment, we're in the now. And so what I'm going to do is go through a laughing meditation. And I'm going to ask you to laugh with me for 30 seconds, hysterically. So Lisa, I can't see you, but I hope you'll join me. Laugh hysterically. I usually do this. Yep.
I wanted to ask you, sorry, let me put my video back on. Do you want me to have everybody join us?
Yeah, let me see their faces, because then I don't feel like I'm such an idiot on my own.
I'm ready to laugh.
Yeah, Lisa's right in front of me, but if you can bring people on, it'd be great, because they'll get more out of it if I can see them and encourage them to laugh, because this is really a fun thing. And you know, we all work at home now, so what are you gonna be embarrassed of? The dog? I mean, there's nobody around. So come on, so join me. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna laugh hysterically. Now you're going to laugh more at me than you're probably going to laugh at anything else, but that's okay.
Make them unmute, because I see that all of them are
unmute, because I'm used to having 1,500 people in front of me so I can hear them, you know, so you can unmute so I can hear you. And so we're going to laugh for 30 seconds, and then you're going to hear this, and you're going to be silent. Just close your eyes and be silent for 30 seconds. And then I'll go from there, and I'll tell you why that's important. So you guys ready?
Yes.
Now, normally when I do this for a minute. I do a laughter meditation for a minute and then a minute silence, but you guys can't handle that. So we won't do that, because a minute is like sitting at a red light forever. So we won't do that. All right, so here we go. 30 seconds starting now.
Oh my God.
You're making it really funny.
Oh God. funny watching you.
That was funny.
Ah.
Okay. Okay.
Take a deep breath and just get centered. Watch your breathing. Okay, now take one deep breath. Hold it at the top. Exhale. Now, what's the difference in the energy from when we were laughing to now? The difference is that I keep forgetting that you guys are responding. Answer your question, Daniel. Yeah, so you guys are corporate. I'm on Zoom, but I'm like, used to people talking back. Anyway, so the difference is the energy. That's what mindfulness is all about. That moment when there's absolutely nothing. That's the space you want to get into. Lisa was talking about taking a walk, right? And doing something different. And someone else was saying something about, getting close to the light, to get that vitamin D. We are in a space right now where even though we're isolated, we need to be able to get present. So I'm going to go through the next 5 things that you should know about getting radically mindful, because they're very important in staying in the now. When we freak out, when we begin to let our mind race, it's because we're living in the past or in the future. And in neither of those places, you have power. The only power you have is in the present moment to think about what's happening in the now. And in that space, you can make a decision that impacts the future, because you can't go backwards. You've seen in a car that the rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield. Why is that? Because it's more important where you're going than where you've been, right? So number 1 is get radically mindful. This exercise was about releasing energy. So now that we're at home a lot and we have our family around and our significant others around, sometimes we may take out our frustration on them without realizing that we've just been sitting in front of a Zoom call for 8 hours and we're just frustrated. This type of laughter meditation releases that pent up energy, so that if you are going to have a discussion with your kids, or you are going to have a discussion with your significant other, it's at a different level because you've already let that energy go. It's not directed at them or the dog or the cat or whatever it may be that you have around. So the second question, the first thing is get radically mindful, is get centered, get in the now. Here's the first question that I ask myself when I get myself finally centered. Where are my thoughts right now? Where are my thoughts right now? Are they in the future? Are they in the past? Are they in the present? Where are they? Now, it's really a trick question, because if you have to ask yourself that question, you're not present. But the goal is to see where, because if we're worried about something that has not transpired, then we're creating the drama in our own head that causes the stress and the anxiety that we're experiencing. So it's important to ask yourself that question: where am I right now? Where are my thoughts? Now, here's the next question, because usually if you're projecting or you're going backwards and fearful of something that might happen or that has happened before, the question is, am I okay right now? Right now. Now, these questions are questions that I still ask myself, because, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to pay my employees. I'm not going to be able to pay the lease. I'm not going to be able to, but wait a minute. Am I okay right now in this moment? Am I okay? Usually the answer is yes. And then from that space, the next question, which would be number 4, would be, are the thoughts I'm currently having real? Are the thoughts I'm currently having real? And have they ever been real? Are they real, and have they ever been real? A lot of times, again, we project into the future because we're not present, and staying in the now, and realizing that the power we have to make the decisions that we need to make for ourselves, our family, our children, and our jobs is in the present moment. We just got to bring ourselves to that place. So what's an example are the thoughts I'm having currently, real? Well, some people would freak out on day 2 of a month about not being able to pay their employees, or not being able to pay their lease, or not being able to pay their bills. Well, the truth is that that's only the second day of the month. Why are you freaking out about what's going to happen at the end of the month? And usually if you ask yourself this question, are the thoughts I'm currently having real? And have they ever been real? Has it ever been true that you didn't pay? No, it's usually never true that you always found a way by hook or crook to pay to get through what you need to get through. So why stress out about that? And then the next question that you want to ask yourself is, in the moment, in the current moment, is what you're doing getting you closer or further from your desired outcome? Is it getting you closer or further from your desired outcome? And then the most important thing, and most of the panelists on the last section said, break the energy, do something different. Don't sit in front of your computer and absolutely bring this anxiety and stress into your life. Be in the present moment, get yourself centered, ask yourself those questions, and go take a walk. And if you can't take a walk because maybe in your part of the world it's snowing, well, maybe you could, right? Maybe you should take off your shoes and feel the snow for once. Who knows? I wouldn't do that, but you might, right? So the whole goal behind mindfulness is that we get present in the moment, that we accept the fact that acceptance is huge when it comes to mindfulness. We don't have to understand it or agree with it, but accepting what is true is very important in creating a mindful life for ourselves. And mindfulness, like I said in the beginning, can be mindfully walking. It can be mindfully talking. It can be mindfully eating. But the goal is to stay more present. Now, why radical? People always ask me, why is it radical mindfulness? Because I realize that mindfulness is being present, but it's really radical to be present more than not. Think about that. Because most of us aren't even breathing right now. We're holding our breath, right? It was like, ugh, right? It doesn't work. So when we're radically mindful, we're mindful more of the time than not. So I'll end with this. So if you have I'll tell you this story because it's really a funny one. So when my book came out, Radical Mindfulness, I got invited to speak at an ashram, never been in one, but all I know is a bunch of yogis in there. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to teach a bunch of yogis? They're like the masters of meditation, right? And so I'm, in this ashram, and I'm like, racking my brain. I'm up on stage. I'm just staring at them because I don't know what to say. And I finally say, thank you for inviting me here. And what a beautiful place you have. And it's so relaxed. And I'm just buying time because I have no idea what I need to say. And then finally it hit me. I said, the driveway in front of your ashram that leads to the road that's in front of your ashram is a 5-lane road. And there's a lot of traffic. If you pull out on that road and someone almost hits you, like, squinch tires, what's your reaction? Do you get mad? Do you give them a hand gesture? Do you yell at them? And you can see all their faces go. I said, you have no practice. That's why it's radical to be more in mindfulness, because the whole point of mindfulness and meditation is that in those times when we're disturbed, that we keep our cool. So if you pull out there and the first thing you do, you start yelling, you have no practice. That's why I call it radical mindfulness, because it's quite radical. So I hope you've learned a little bit today. I mean, to me, the laughter is, you can also do gibberish. Laughter, if you don't do the laughter thing, because people might think you're crazy. Like I know you were laughing at me, and that's okay. But the gibberish is like, and the whole point of it. Actually, I see Ceja here. Maybe we can have a glass of wine and then we'll speak gibberish, right? It'll be just normal. Hi, it's good to see you. So I guess that's all I have for today, Josefina. I hope this helped people get relaxed a little bit. And if anything, you got to laugh a little bit and forget about life.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much. I have to tell you my own personal experience with that laughing meditation, Daniel. I was doing it in my living room. I was having a particular situation and my son walked in on me and he's like, Mom, what are you doing? So it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. Thank you, Danielle, for guiding us through that meditation. I think it does shift the energies for us, right? And how we can look at the day and kind of work through things that maybe we're not thinking about. But one of the things that you said that really resonates for me is when you're practicing mindfulness and you're practicing, it's a very reserved space and you can control a lot of things. Mm-hmm. When it's important and is when you're no longer controlling it.
Right.
Then that's when you have to really employ these tricks that can help you, maybe not tricks, I won't call them tricks, but these ways in which you can really kind of control and balance out how you're feeling and how you react to things.
Yeah, because life happens on the outside. I was telling you just earlier today, my son calls me from Los Angeles. I'm in the Andes of Peru, and says he totaled my car. And right. that's an external thing that happened. And his mother called me today and says to me, how come you didn't get mad? I said, I'm in the Andes. What good would that do? What, I'm going to get myself all stirred up and have a heart attack over something that, I mean, he's okay. He didn't get hurt. We'll just work out the insurance, right? And that's a perfect example of just staying in my moment and not allowing life to dictate my serenity, my peace. And knowing that in doing so, I can make decisions to father him in a different way than I would yelling at him. My parents yelling at me did not work. So surely it's not going to work for me to yell at him. And he's probably freaked out anyway. And so she says, well, when are you going to talk to him? I said, whenever he's cooled off and I'm cooled off, we'll have a decent conversation about maybe what he should have done or should have not done. But it doesn't do anybody any good. That's being mindful. That's staying in the now. And, you know, I can project in the future, oh my gosh, what is he going to do? And blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't serve us. So staying present. And that's where the laughter meditation comes in. It's not that the laughter is funny. That's why I do it. But it's more about releasing the energy that's in the inside so that I don't take it out on somebody else. That's the whole point, that energy isn't transferred. Have you ever been with someone that came to you, shared all their, like they threw up on you? They just gave you all their problems and then they walked away feeling good and you're like, ugh.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's mindfulness doesn't allow people to do that. It keeps you centered in the moment where you can go, okay. Because really, if you want to have compassion for someone, the true definition of compassion is being with someone without taking on their pain. Because really what they're asking for is love. And if you can give them love instead of an answer, then they're probably it's what they need, right? But if we take on that energy, now we've become part of the problem. So compassion is being centered in the moment and just listening without the intent to reply or without any comment at all, and just sending them love. That's it. That's being mindful.
Well, thank you, Danielle. I want to thank all the panelists for joining us. Thank you, Amelia, for giving us that great inspiration.
So good to see you.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the live feed because we're going to just go into a virtual networking session. So for those folks that want to be part of the session, so I'm going to start the live feed right now. Just